As quite a number of you know, I've been doing quite a lot of overtime this past week, not on YouTube, in real life, so please forgive me for this particular back. I'm feeling a tad lazy today, but we do have an article that does make one think considerably. How can we mitigate the crime that is female over-imprisonment? Right, so as a lot of people know, I have on many occasions talked about the sentencing gap. The fact that women by and large get lesser sentences for the same crime, with that particular line of wording. Does it not remind people of the pay gap? Anyway, when it comes to committing crimes, humans have two distinct forms. Overwhelmingly, men perform most criminal acts, and with only a hint of exaggeration, women never commit the most heinous offences. That is a subjective argument. Some heinous crimes include child abuse. Women certainly commit that. And let's not forget here that women can't rape men. That is a heinous crime, and it should in fact be recognised as such. Once it is, we can then of course start talking about how true that statement is. As such, it is an egregious public policy disfigurement that all Australian jurisdictions have expansive and expensive prisons that are purpose-built for imprisoning the portion of the community that nearly none of us fear. As a non-convict. I'm not too familiar with what that's supposed to mean. Okay, I do, but let's just play stupid for a second. Let's say for a second that women are totally not fear-worthy. Okay, now what? Am I going to use my patriarchal powers to overrule anything a woman says? Oh wait, women are, for the most part, a protected class. So the fear you are talking about is entirely, for the most part, a physical thing. So let's focus on the others, shall we? How about academic success and career choice? How about in politics? I do recall a certain Prime Minister you had. Yeah, she did wonderful work. Not that mine's any better. Worse still is that female incarceration numbers are at record highs and increasing. Well, and this raises many questions about why women are reducing themselves to committing crimes. As in reducing their worth and feeling the need to go out there and break a law. Do you believe that maybe the law should not apply? And do you think that they are getting the same sentence as their male counterparts? As much as we like to means assess those sentences, I do believe there should be some consistency in it. I think most people would agree on that. Numbers don't lie. Women constitute approximately 8% of all Australian prisoners. However, the total number of women prisoners has grown considerably over the past decade. And why is that? Are certain disparities in law being recognised? Or are women going out of their way to be more, criminal? In 2005, there were 1,734 women prisoners, which amounted to 6.8% of all prisoners. In June 2015, the total number of prisoners in Australia was 35,949, of whom 2,825 were women. This amounts to 7.6% of the total prison population. As women are less responsible for criminal law offences, they are inevitably imprisoned less than men. This is why I take issue. Just because women by and large commit less crime does not mean they are as a whole worthy of a lesser sentence. They committed a crime, therefore they get the same sentence. This does not mean, therefore, you then apply a larger sentence to men because more men commit crimes. It's not guilt by association. But the level of female underrepresentation in overall imprisonment rates is not nearly enough. It should be somewhere between 0 and 1% of the total prison population, and this clearly means you need to address a societal issue, where almost 8%, 7.6 to be exact, feel the need to go out there and break the law. Do you believe perhaps that certain charges should not be placed upon a woman? Maybe the domestic violence one. We know how you Aussies love to promote domestic violence with men being the perpetrator in every single scenario. You're very good at that. No offense to the Australians out there that aren't that retarded, including the one who links this to me. Your knife joke was shit though, by the way. Women comprise 1/5 of all defendants who appear in Australian criminal courts. When it comes to the more serious forms of crime, female involvement drops considerably. Women comprise slightly less at 13% of defenders in the higher courts. Again, I do firmly believe this number will be changed once certain crimes are finally recognised for what they are. I'm not restating what it is, as I have earlier stated it. Women are even less represented in relation to the most serious offences. They commit virtually no sexual offences. Well, imagine my fucking shock. Women constitute 15% of all defendants whose most serious crime is homicide or a related offence, attempted basically. However, the number of women charged with such offences is low given that only 955 such offences are reported annually. So, do you believe that this then should be addressed as a disparity in imprisonment? because this means someone is being charged with a crime. It doesn't mean that they have actually been sentenced to prison. And as we know with this particular instance, when it goes to a court, it is entirely circumstance-based, which is why using these statistics is somewhat inaccurate. Or, better yet, it is intellectually dishonest to make a rather broad point. When women do kill, it is usually different to male killing. Women often kill against a backdrop of victimization and hopelessness, not because they are angry or revengeful. Clearly, you haven't seen any murder mysteries. Like Poirot, seriously. I know that's not really a fact thing, I'm just mocking for a second here. That remark is utterly absurd. Clearly, this is written by somebody who has little to no understanding of human beings. And I'm not trying to say women are vindictive as a whole, but women are vindictive as a whole. Oh, that insult title, right? Oh, just had to work that in because I didn't want to do a video on it. The offence types that women commit, a reasonable portion of, are fraud, theft, and traffic and vehicle regulatory offences. Okay, fraud, credit card probably. Theft, not surprising. Shoplifting is so profitable these days after all, isn't it? And vehicle traffic offences. Why does that not surprise me? I know it sounds sexist. Most guys will say, oh, we're better than women, and of course, that's not entirely true. Obviously, because women only make up 24% of the offence part. The most recent figures relating to offence types for which people are imprisoned show that 9% of women were in prison for homicide and related offences. The majority of women, more than 60%, were in jail for non-violent and non-sexual offences. Well, that doesn't surprise me too much about the non-sexual offences part, since most women don't get charged with sexual offences. Hell, even if they're a teacher and they're banging a child, they normally get a slap on the wrist until they have a mental disorder. That's so fair. The most common offences for which women are imprisoned are unlawful entry, theft, fraud and deception offences. The unlawful entry one doesn't surprise me. Do they break into an ex-boyfriend's, perhaps? Or a men's-only club and think women belong here too? Me respect women, but not enough to let you into a men-only club. Get the fuck out. Theft, fraud and deception offences, shocker. Drug offences, well, muling is profitable. And offences against justice procedures, so lying under oath, shocking. By contrast, the majority of men are in prison for acts of violence or sexual offences. Wow, you Aussie men, you need to up your game in the other departments. Get good, bitches. Even though you make up the majority of the rest of them anyway, so... Anyway, there is also a fundamental distinction in the manner in which male and female prisoners are categorized in Australia. 1/3 of male prisoners are classified as minimum security. More than 70% of female prisoners have this classification, probably because they're committing the non-violent, non-sexual offences. While they've committed a crime and should serve time for that, those offences are not worthy of being placed in some supermax, in some bog somewhere. Implications for policy. The undeniable difference between men and women when it comes to committing crime should be reflected in a fundamentally different approach to the sentencing of women. Oh god, I can see why this pissed Quacks off. Oh dear. Not only should women generally receive more lenient penalties than men because they are normally more law-abiding, but women who commit the same crime as men should in most cases receive lighter penalty. Deep breaths, everyone. We will get through this together. Me respect women, remember? Earlier I mentioned my position on this. If you commit a crime regardless of gender, you do the same time as someone else doing the same crime. That's my view on it. As long as it falls within the bracket, like the sentencing bracket of like some crimes have 3 to 5 years or something, that's fine. I am okay with that. But when you introduce, quote, mitigating factors, and you start to bend it, or you decide because men commit a crime more often than a woman, that all men should be punished heavier than a woman, or a woman should receive leniency points because the sisterhood done good, I think you're walking down a very, very slippery path. And if anything, it supports my very early notion that women are perceived as a protected class, because they somehow have the commendation points as a group to warrant lesser sentences. I do not agree with this stance. Let's have a look at this implications for policy bit. We need to finish this anyway. Women reoffend less frequently than men, and by a considerable margin. I'm not even going to be drawn in on the subject of rehabilitation because I think Gary Awesome did a fantastic video on it. If I can find it, I will link it. Although his new Steel Panther video, yeah, that got me. Death to all but metal. The impact of imprisonment on women is generally more damaging than on men. Well, that would probably certainly more than likely give a good enough reason for why women are less likely to then reoffend, or an indication of how weak women's minds are. And it certainly tells you then that women certainly understand the gravitas of the situation once they fucked up. Consequences isn't exactly something people understand until they've fucked up. Women who are imprisoned for a long time can have their right to procreate effectively negated. I think I might leave this pause in, Honestly, who gives a fuck? You went out there and you committed a crime. You knowingly broke the law of the land. In a democratic society, you took it upon yourself to bend the rules to suit you. You are not a benefit to society. You are a criminal. I don't give a fuck if you can't procreate. You can instead practice with the bulldyke who's going to fist you. Or if you're really lucky, a weeb. I don't know if Australia's outlawed that yet, but we'll get to them eventually. I'm joking, of course. I'll get to them in 2020. For men, the same sanction is typically merely a suspension of this right. Thank you for bringing biology into this. It really appealed to the scientist in me. Women also suffer more while they are imprisoned. They are more likely to have mental health issues and be victims of sexual abuse. That tells me more needs to be done in prisons to help women adjust to life on the inside, all the while understanding that they belong there, and also provide assistance and protect them, as is the job of the, I don't know what they call those prison people, bitches, wardens, custodians, guards. Women perform a greater portion of the nurturing and benevolent acts in society than men do. Nice, let's weigh up what men and women do. How about this one then? The majority of men build societies. The majority of women's inhabit societies. How's that for sexism? Removing them from society often has a devastating impact on their children. They should have thought of that before they committed the crime. Allowing them to get off with it means they have not learnt the lesson that comes with committing a crime. They then have shown themselves to be not only an inadequate member of society, but an inept parent, who should not be allowed to be a parent on the grounds that they are teaching their children stupid ideas, like committing crimes. This disruption should be minimized. Yes, it should. By not committing the crime. Simply ignoring it because the sisterhood done good is not a good enough reason. There's one more paragraph in this article I want to touch on, because quite frankly I cannot be jaffed to continue with this much longer. Effectively eliminating the threat of imprisonment from the female psyche will not encourage them to commit more crime. Okay, we're done here. Fuck this shit. Australia, you're done. Like Sweden. You're fucked. Honestly, I'm too tired for this shit. I'm just going to play my outro instead. I can't be bothered to finish properly.
Omegon, I'm going to batter your prostate.